Hello and welcome back to Humanizer, where I'm converting the free and open source MPFB human creator from Blender into Godot. So this time I'm working on automatically importing the OBJ files from the system assets. So you can see there's an object file, and I need to convert that into a usable array mesh resource automatically so that I don't have to export all of the clothing from Blender manually. So this time I just generate the mesh, and next time I'll add the bone weights and the texture. And I won't be uploading it to the repository until I have it all completely working. So now I'll show you how I got this part to work. Currently, the process for importing clothing into Humanizer is to make a new human with the MPFB Blender plugin. And you don't need to worry about the shape keys, but you do have to add the skeleton. So I'm still using the Mixamo, but I'll probably be changing that. So now we have the skeleton. Then you can go to Apply Assets, and you can see there's eyes, eyebrows, eyelashes, hair, teeth, tongue, and clothes. So I'll just apply the female casual suit too. So now it's added to the human, and the bone weights have been set as well, so that's mostly what we are trying to import. And you can see that the UVs are also mapped correctly. So now I'll want to save this in the Humanizer project in the closed.gen folder as close.blend. Then when the assets are done loading in Godot, you have to double-click the blend file to open the advanced import settings, and then go to the clothing mesh and make sure save to file is enabled, and then I'll set the path to import mesh.resource in the female casual suit folder. So save, and you'll re-import. So you could, of course, put all of the clothing in the same blend file, but you would still have to export them to separate meshes. So it was just faster to demonstrate with only one. But this takes some time. It's not particularly time consuming, but you can imagine if you have multiple asset zips downloaded and you want to import them all, it'll just be a lot easier to automatically generate these mesh files for processing. Now, I've talked about the Vertex Finder before. Basically, it's just a custom class I wrote to find the vertex positions on the mesh using the surface arrays. So I'll add the import mesh and attach the Vertex Finder mesh instance, and then I'll need to save and reload because it needs to load the arrays. So now if I just turn off the Blender IDs, the dot is on the Godot mesh vertex position. So there's about 16,000. So by default, the vertex positions in Godot do not match the vertex positions in Blender. And that's a problem because you need the shape keys and the bone weight files refer to the Blender vertex position instead of the Godot. So you need them to match up. And to turn on the Vertex IDs in Blender, you'll need to, under Edit Preferences, enable the developer extras first, and then change to edit mode, so up here, and then there's the square with one of the dots highlighted. You'll enable indices in the developer, and now if you click on one of these, you can see the vertex position. So 2251 is in the middle of the stomach, and 2251 here is over on the right hip. So obviously those are not matching up. So instead I create a new index out of the unique positions from the vertex list and remap the IDs to the positions that they all share, and then create a new array out of that. So basically it just gets the first instance of each vertex position. So now if I enable the Blender IDs and set this to 2251, now you can see that the selected vertex is in the middle of the stomach. And if I were to select a new position, so 2496, you can see it's up on the left shoulder. So now the vertex IDs are matching to their correct position. So the Make Human System Assets download does come with the OBJ files for the base mesh of the clothing. So if I add the OBJ to the scene, and I'll go ahead and rename it. And set the scale and the position, so just so you can see it better. Then I'll attach the Vertex Finder Mesh Instance class and save and reload the scene. So now you can see that the vertex positions between the two meshes do not line up, even though they're both using the unique index. They do have the same number of vertices though, when you get the unique positions. So basically it's just reordering the vertexes, and you can see that lots of people have had this issue, especially like map makers need to preserve the original IDs. So I could read the Blender source code and reverse engineer the vertex ordering, but it will be a lot easier to just use the Blender scripts to export the needed files. Now, when you add a blend file to the scene, it has to generate the nodes, and you can't just add the blend as a child at runtime, so like when you play it. So I could probably set up the import settings automatically, potentially, but when I looked up the file loading at runtime, all they have for 3D scenes is the GLTF GLB loader. And since Godot uses the Blender export to GLTF anyway, whenever it imports it to the scene, it makes the most sense to just export the meshes as GLBs, which is the binary, so they'll be smaller. So in a new Blender project, I'll get rid of the other objects first, and then import the wavefront OBJ from the system assets zip file. And then just export as GLTF into the clothing folder. So I'll save that as close GLB and let it re-import into Godot. So if I get rid of the human model, and then I'll add the newly created GLB file. So I'll make local and just move the mesh and rename it. Set the scale and position. And I'll attach the Vertex Finder Mesh Instance class. Then I'll need to save it and reload. But now you can see that the import mesh and the GLB mesh do have the same vertex ordering. So you can see that they're in the same position on both meshes. So the GLB export does keep the Blender vertex ordering, unlike the OBJ. So if I did import the OBJ and then export it again as an OBJ, it would still have the original order. So the GLB file will work for this. So to automatically import all of the clothing, I'll go to the Make Human Asset Packs page and just get the Make Human System Assets. So this will just be all of the basic outfits, and so we'll download the zip. And once it's done downloading, I'll extract the system assets and copy all of the folders. Then in the Humanizer project, I have the MPFB2 plugin folder. So I'll make a new folder for the assets and paste these in here. So I don't want to distribute all of these, so I've added them to the ignore list for GitHub, which means you'll have to copy them in yourself, but I'll have the empty assets folder available so you know where to put them. Then I'll make a new folder for the generated assets, and this is where the Blender script will place the new GLBs. So in the assets we have the OBJs and they need to be converted. Then I found a Blender script to recursively convert OBJ files into .blends. So I copied this and modified it to work with GLBs, and I saved the blend file in the closed-gen folder in the project. So you'll need to open this with Blender and then change the input and output folders so that they point to the project on your local system. And once those are set, you should make sure that the scene is empty first, and go ahead and run the script. So you can see it was processing, and now in the generated assets folder, all of the clothing has its own folder with the GLB inside of it. So I think it's best just to keep their file structure. But so now we have all of the base GLBs. So the blend script was throwing an error because it doesn't contain any nodes, and Godot was constantly trying to reload the blend files, so I basically just put it in its own folder, obj to fbx, and then I added the gdignore, so now it won't try to import this blend file into the project. So now in the Vertex Finder, I can add the newly generated female casual suit GLB. So I'll make local and delete the other then I'll rename it and attach the Vertex Finder mesh instance, and then reset the transform and set the scale. And I'll have to reload the scene. But now, when I change the vertex, you can see that the exported mesh still matches the initial Blender mesh for the vertex positions, so that is still working. Now I want to convert the GLB into a mesh resource that Godot can use, so I'll make a new 3D scene named GLB to mesh, and I'll save it in the closed gen folder, and I'll attach a new script. So here is the code from the Godot engine documentation to import a GLTF or GLB into the scene at runtime. So I'll make a new function to load GLB, and this will take a path parameter. So I'll just change that to print and change the string path to the GLB path. And now on ready, I'll load the female outfit from the generated assets folder. So if I run this, it doesn't throw any errors, which is good, but you can't really tell if it successfully added to the scene. So I'll just add a camera 3D and add the sun and environment so you can actually see it. And now if I run it again, you can see that the outfit was loaded. So I'll move that back and up a little bit. And now if I were to load the female elegant suit, for example, instead, you can see now it's loading this outfit. So it is dynamically loading the GLBs at runtime. Now you don't actually need to add the node as a child of the scene to get the mesh, so I'll return the scene node instead and set the GLB node equal to the load GLB, and I'll go ahead and move the close path to the top just to make it easier to change. And then I want to get the array mesh. So when you add the GLB to the scene and right click on the node to make local, you can see that it makes a node 3D and a mesh instance 3D. And then in the mesh, we have the array mesh, and this is the resource that I want to save. So I'll delete that, and I'll get the import mesh equal to the GLB node get child at 0, since they should only have one child, and then dot mesh to get the array mesh, and then I'll set the clothes name equal to the close path dot get file, which will return female casual suit 2.glb, and then I want to get the base name to basically remove the extension, so the close name will just be the file name. And then I want to make a variable for the save path equals and I'll just save it in the same folder as the import GLB. So I'll get the base directory, which will be all of this, and I'll add a slash, and then the clothes name dot resource, and then I'll use the resource saver to save the import mesh at the save path. So now if I run the scene, you can see that it's generated the array mesh resource in the folder, and if I add it to the scene, it is flipped over, but that's okay, and I'll fix the shading later in the process. So I need to still generate the bone weights from the helper mesh, and I also need to generate the material file for the textures, but I'll do that in the next video. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching and have a great day.